Never forget, people are not inherently afraid of change. People are afraid of loss. I do owe you guys that our good friend Alex is saving the world at the Aspen Institute. And so shout out Alex Smith for thinking about the world while we just sit here and enjoy our summers.
And shout out Alex Smith for bettering himself. Like this is an intensive, week for him as he goes and spends time with all these other fellows and good on Brother Smith.
I've been in those situations, and I walk into a room with people waste. Usually, when I walk into a room like that, I'm the dumbest guy in the room, which I'm okay with, and I actually prefer that. But it's intimidating when you go in there with PhDs and CEOs, and
yes.
Hey, I don't really know what would you do. Well, I was a quarterback for many years. Okay, I was a basketball player. How'd that work out for you? But you learn to enjoy that. So I'm proud of my brother for stretching himself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so today I had a topic I was on top of my mind. We often talk about risk, right? Taking a big swing in life. And all of our guests, to a person has risked something to make it big. And so, I love our conversation with Steve Kerr last week, where it's easy, sitting here with multiple titles to say, oh, this is the path,
yeah.
Right? So, as my good friend Michael Dunleavy says, the winners write the history books, right? Yeah. And so it's easy to pontificate when you've IPO'd and when you're working for a top-notch VC and, you've won championships and you're hosting a Glue Guys podcast. And so I want to ask a question of you. When is it worth swinging big versus kind of standing pat?
Oh, okay. I like that. All right, cool.
You get what I'm saying?
100%.
Is it always prudent to swing for the fences, even though, regardless of what the risk is? So walk me through the times where you swung big and the times that you stood pat, that was the best course of action.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. All right. So I think that I have real views on this topic that may or not be right, but I think that they are strong. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad we're talking about it. So I think my headline is you have to earn the right to swing big. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that some of the standing pat, using air quotes, is putting in the work that earns you that right. So what do I mean by that? I think that if you kind of take swing big to its logical extreme, you could be doing it as a kid. Maybe you should drop out of high school, and go start a company, and even the people that are the biggest proponents of take risk. Very few people are don't finish high school. You know what I'm saying? Right. And you can imagine it's sort of those people, they're sort of you have to get some level of foundational education before you go out and take risks. Even the people that we lionize as risk takers, in the startup world, they dropped out of college and usually from a pretty good college. Do you see what I'm saying? They had built up a lot of educational background and pedigree, frankly, even of hey, I dropped out of MIT, I dropped out of Harvard or whatever. So anyway, I think to answer your question, maybe to get it started, I think that you gotta create some downside protection for yourself through your education, I think, before you swing big. And in the work context. I think that everyone has a different definition of what downside protection is, right? And again, it's staying in the work context. It's sort of can you make sure that you're going to be okay, regardless of how the big swing turns out? And so, Shane, I think the reason that I'm generally more of a proponent for people to take bigger swings when I'm talking to them is usually they're pretty smart, right?
Yep.
And usually they underestimate the value of their brain in the downside case. It's not your brain goes away in the downside case, right? Yep. If you swing big and it doesn't work, usually you can go and get yourself employed or, get yourself going. And it's I think that I think people basically undervalue their ability to create a good downside case through their brain, you
Yeah.
know? And so anyway, that's the conversation starter. What
How
do
do
you
you
think?
how do you even like assess that? How can someone who's our listener out there assess like what is the potential of my brain
Yeah.
to protect against downside? Like you don't
Yeah.
know until
Yeah.
you know.
Let's use dollars as some analogy to, your brain's ability to produce downside protection, right? Just for a second. I think so. One thing is sometimes when people evaluate a big risk, they sort of like, they're like, it's either going to work or if it doesn't work, I like go to zero. I have no job and my savings only lasts me this long or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
So I think one practical thing is like be realistic about how much money you'll make if you go do this new thing and it doesn't work. So if you're thinking about going from a steady income to a startup with a lot less cash potential,
Yep.
right? I think that like if you go to the startup and it fails, it's not that you never earn again. It's that you don't earn a lot of cash for a few years, right?
Yep.
And that you then go get employed again. And
Yep.
so I think one thing is like be realistic about what your alternative is, you know? But I guess maybe the other thing, Shane, so maybe the big thing would be like don't catastrophize. It's not like you go somewhere and then all of a sudden you like lose all of it. So maybe to tell a story,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
I'll make this more real for you.
Yeah.
When I was leaving KKR, I was very nervous about leaving because I was like, well, if I go to Instacart and it doesn't work, effectively, like, how much money have we saved? And like, how long will it last, if I go do this?
Because you're
And
married and have
married, three
responsibilities.
kids. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
Real. This is much different than fresh out of college. I'm going to go work for a
Yes.
startup. Okay. So
Yes.
real life implications here.
Totally. 33 years old, like all that stuff. And so the first round of it where I was like, oh, I shouldn't go I was like, we don't have enough money to cover us the rest of our lives. I can't like retire right now. Like this is not something that's going to work. And so if I go take this risk and it doesn't work, we don't have the ability to just like cover ourselves. Like you, Shane, have earned the right now through your NBA career, your speaking, all that. We're like, presumably if you don't earn anymore, like you'll probably be okay. Right. Whereas like that was not the case for us at that age. So I was very worried. And then I think that what became helpful, and this is why I think it's more practical, I think the answer of like, well, wait a second. If I go do this thing at Instacart and it doesn't work, first, I'm probably not going to do it for 10 years and have it not work. Like if you really walk through the logic, why would I be there for 10 years and like it's zero? Like I probably would have left before then. So it's not a forever decision. The next thing is, even if I can't replicate my current job, could I replicate 50% of that earnings when I come back?
Yeah.
I think that was helpful too, because it's like, I was originally being like, well, I just like wouldn't have a job anymore,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, I don't know, you probably get some job, So those things help because then all of a sudden it's like, well, I have some upside. And the real downside I have is I don't get to work with these people who I really like and care about.
Yeah.
And I might have like real downside risk in my like earnings potential. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I guess, can I flip it to you for a second on this? When you are playing, right? When you're playing, how do you think about big risks or big swings, right? Because you're playing in the league.
Yep.
You certainly have a defined amount of time
Yep.
that you can play.
Yep.
How did you think about leaving teams, signing contracts, all these things when you were playing?
Well, I like what you said about you have to earn the right to take risks. Okay. And this is a message that I'm a high school coach and coach AAU basketball this summer. So teaching young people how to play the game of basketball is a little bit different than how I learned. Right. And I tell a player the most important thing you can learn in basketball as a young player is the fundamental question of basketball: know when to pass, know when to shoot.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the most fundamental decision that you have to learn if you want to advance, if you want to play, if you want to just be a decent basketball player. You don't get that, you don't play. Okay, and so watching film with young guys who come in and they may jack a 3-point shot after zero or one pass or take a crazy shot, I say, my man, what is the fundamental question that you have to answer? Do you know when to pass, know when to shoot? Okay. And so you got to understand now the best players on our team, okay, the seniors, the upperclassmen, the guys who've done this for many years, if they take that shot, I'm probably not going to yell at them
Oh,
because
that's
because they have earned the
Yep.
right
Yep.
to take that shot, even though
Yep.
it's a bad shot. Okay,
Yeah.
even though it's a
Yeah.
bad shot, I can live with that because I know what I'm getting elsewhere on the court, and
Yeah.
I can talk to them, and they say, "Yeah, my bad, coach." But as a
Yeah.
young player trying to establish yourself,
Hmm.
I understand you're trying to expand your game. Okay. And that's what every young player wants to do. They want to expand their game. I want to show the coaches I can do this. But you have to show that you've earned the right to even try to do that. Right. And so like I
Yeah.
knew, as even as a number 6
Yeah.
draft pick in the NBA coming in, there was a lot of draft capital and I had a big runway to sort of fail.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so that made a
Were you on
huge
a guaranteed deal, Shane, when you
yes.
got into the league? Okay.
So when I signed, a lottery pick draft capital, I had 3 years guaranteed, really 4 years. And so, look, I knew that there was a lot on the line for the GM, for the coach, for me to
Hmm.
succeed.
Hmm.
Right. And so as a result, you get a lot of leeway. All right. I played 40 minutes a night. I could take crazy shots if I wanted to. I didn't. But I knew that if I was a 25th pick in the draft, if I was a second round pick, my runway is much shorter.
Hmm.
All right. My ability to be able to expand my game and do things that maybe I think I can do in my own mind, but others haven't seen yet, that is very, very, very limited. And so, so I tell my young guys,
Yeah.
if you're going to take that shot, you better make it. All
Yeah.
right. 'Cause if you don't, you're coming and sitting next to me on the bench. And so, uh, you're as a basketball player, you're always sort of taking stock of like how much leash do I have, right? What can I get
Yeah.
away with?
Yeah.
What can I get away with? What's crazy, right? So, number 1 pick in the draft, Cooper Flag. If he comes in a game and he jacks 25 shots in his first game, no one's going to bat an eye because
Yep.
he's earned that right. Now, if the first pick of the second round comes out and does that, we got a problem. And so, understanding when to swing big in basketball means when can I do things that maybe I know that no one else knows about.
Yeah. One big question is, did you think about like having a shelf life of earnings time where you're like, okay, I gotta, even if it's not the team I exactly want to play for, I gotta make sure I can make a certain amount of money because the likelihood of my heaviest earnings years are to be in this next 15 years.
Yeah.
Right. That's the big question. Like, did you think about that when you were playing?
My only goal when I played, Ravi, I had 2 goals. One was to play 10 years, and the other was to walk away before they kicked me out or asked me to leave.
Huh. Yeah.
Okay. And I knew if I satisfied both those things,
Yeah.
that I would be
Yep.
able to do whatever I wanted after basketball.
But dude, so that's so good, Shane. And then now I'm gonna ask my small question in a second. But like, dude, it's such a perfect embodiment of your inputs philosophy, genuinely. Because like, dude, that is a big important life thing. And on the big important life thing, you're like, nope, I trusted the inputs. I have the right inputs. If I have these 2 inputs, like I'll be fine. I will just tell you, dude, like I am not nearly I historically have not nearly been as disciplined as you on like, no, it's all good. Like if I just do the right things, like we're gonna be fine. I absolutely, would think about like I gotta have a certain
Oh,
number, like
well,
all
no,
that.
I had a number. I had 10 years. And so I knew,
Yeah,
like, no matter what role I played, if you play 10 years in the NBA, if you're around for 10 years,
yeah,
even
you'll
if
be
you're a
fine.
journeyman,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
10
Okay, okay,
years,
okay. I buy that.
you're gonna make enough money and have enough cachet to have some freedom.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Okay.
that's
I buy that.
so 10 years was the number. It didn't matter like what my role was. It
Yeah.
really wasn't. And the other part of that is I wanted to walk away before they asked me to leave.
And is
Okay.
that for pride or is that for something else? Like, by the way, like I would want that too. I just like, why was that so important?
Because that shows I had control over my career.
Yeah.
And again, I've earned the right to do that.
Yeah, totally. So good. Yeah.
I've
Um,
earned right. And
yeah,
so
100%.
and so like we're saying the same things. And so it's kind of, I kind of backed into if I do these
Yeah.
2 things,
Yeah.
then you know what? I've had a successful career. It wasn't about championships. It wasn't about starting. It wasn't about points. It wasn't about any of that. Literally, it was if I play 10 years and I'm able to walk away when I want to walk away, I mean, I had a hell of a run. I've had a hell of a run. So like when I tell young players, I say, man, that's your goal. The goal is avoid ruin. Stay in the game
Dude, it's so good.
and
Okay,
excuse
so
yourself from the table when you want to, and then I promise you will live a happy life, and you'll be fulfilled by your career.
okay, now second question, much more tactical on like risks, standing pat versus big risks. I would imagine that my mental model would be like you're guarding Kobe, okay, and you're like, this dude is a beast.
Yeah.
I gotta pay attention to every single percentage. I'm only gonna play the percentages. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not gonna go anywhere other than just where the numbers tell me to go to push him.
Yep.
I would imagine that there's some people that you would be guarding where you're just like, I'm better than this guy. Right? Like, it's not about me
Very
push. Like,
few.
no,
Yeah.
no, okay, but like, what about before the NBA? Like, what about where it's just like, listen, like, I'm just gonna lock this guy. I'm not do. It's not about the percentages or anything like that. It's just like I'm gonna go for everything in this case. I'm gonna now. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna play the screens differently. Did you ever take a different risk approach, particularly on defense, when you just knew you were the best?
No.
Huh.
I always play. To me, playing it safe, and this is where this question comes from. Me playing it safe was totally trusting the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because the risk was that I knew better than the math, which I knew was not possible.
Yeah.
So swinging big in that standpoint is I know what the numbers say about Kobe, but you know what? I got a hunch and I'm going to swing and I'm going to do something again that no one knows but me.
Yeah.
And it's going to work out. Now you can do that, but it better work.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
And so, a better analogy for my career was when I played for the Memphis Grizzlies, when we had the change in coaches with Hubie Brown.
Yeah.
And my rookie year, I got drafted 6. Played for this, Sidney Lowe-led Grizzlies, and I was a 2 guard that year because our shooting guard Michael Dixon got hurt. I played 40 minutes a night. I averaged the most points I did in my career my first year. Right? If you saw
Crazy.
average points per game graph, it goes down, straight down in a linear fashion every year. Like no one does that. What a crazy career, right?
Yeah.
And so the second year. And so my rookie year, I was running pick and roll. I was coming off screens. I was doing like all these things that I thought like an NBA shooting guard, small forward would do, right? And that's how I worked. And I'm like, yeah, that's a natural progression. Everything was progressed that way my entire career. I did that at Duke. Okay, I'm gonna do it in the NBA. I'm going to be a 15 to 20 point scorer every single night. Well, Hubie Brown had different plans. So we fire our coach, Sidney Lowe, after like an 0-8 start, my second year. Hubie Brown comes in and instills an entirely different offense. Okay. And at this point, we got a 2-guard, West person. So I moved back to the small forward. Well, in this offense, the only thing that the small forward does is space. He post pass, cuts, and spaces to the corner. Okay. So if anything, like my role shrunk.
Yeah.
I never dribbled and I never ran pick and roll. And we ran a very kind of like cookie cutter offense where it was predicated just on where the ball is, and it depends on. And so it was very paint by numbers offense, and the small forward just did not have a role. And so at first it was very frustrating. Because I'm used to running pick and roll, I'm used to shooting the ball, I'm used to doing all these things, and I felt like I was kind of put in a box. And so the swing would have been for me to say, you know what, Hubie, no, I'm going to show you that I can do this, and I'm going to run pick and roll, and I'm going to do all these things, and I would look like an asshole because I'm like
totally.
I'm zigging when the team is zagging, and I'm doing my own thing. And if I would have hit doing those things,
totally
huge surplus. But if I didn't, I'm not going to play. Yeah. Right. And so what's the name of the game? Play 10 years. Right.
Yeah.
Avoid ruin. So my mindset shifted into, not really do the safe thing, but just be excellent in this role.
Yeah. Okay. So this is fascinating. Oh, I was thinking of a bunch of stuff when you were talking, and I think that there are good lessons in here. So one thing that I do think about, back to like earn the right to take the risk,
Yep.
right? If you take that as a theme, um, one thing that actually matters financially to do that is to like keep your lifestyle below your earnings,
Yes.
right?
Avoid
Because
avoid ruin.
avoid ruin. It's exactly what you just
Avoid
said,
ruin.
right?
Yes.
Because I've seen people that make a bunch of money, and they're stuck. They can't do anything other than what they're doing. And frankly, they have brought in a ton of risk in their life, because if they get fired, they got a big problem. All
Yep.
of a sudden their life is different. And I think that that's the exact opposite of the person that lives well below their means, right? Who has for sure avoided ruins.
Yep.
Because then, one, they can be opportunistic if they want.
Yep.
They find something they like, good, let's go. Or if that's, God forbid, something happens professionally, they get fired, like they're okay. They're not like all of a sudden having to go and move into the basement.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, which is I do think tactically, like earning the right to take risk. Oh, go ahead, Shane. You were going to say something.
Can you think about that the same way with opportunity? Can you say you got to live below your opportunity level?
Yeah, can say more. Maybe,
So
but what do you think? Yeah,
so instead of like, okay, financial ruin, we all get that.
yeah.
Is there opportunity ruin? Can you spend all of your capital and kind of live, kind of take swings above your opportunity? If that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
No. I actually think I get what
is
you're
there
saying.
opportunistic ruin?
Yeah,
Can you swing so big that you don't make half the money like you
yeah.
did before, but like you just don't get a shot anymore?
Yeah, I think you can. I would say there's a couple of things though. Like one, if you make them, you can bounce back. And maybe this is informed a little bit where I live. I do think Silicon Valley is like more okay with failure than some places. I actually think that's like,
100%,
right.
100%.
So I think I'm probably biased positive on this. Like it might be different in other geographies. It probably is. But one is, I think you can bounce back here from most mistakes other than a mistake of integrity. You bounce back, you have a mistake of integrity, you have a real problem.
Agreed.
And so I do think like you can't make those. And I think then you really do eliminate any downside protection, because there's just, people just won't touch you. I do think, Shane, if you fail a lot, and you fail a lot big, I think people at some point can be like, look, you don't treat other people's capital the way you should. You know what I'm saying? And like, give an example. Like, I think that, look, I was surprised that Adam Newman got another shot after WeWork.
Yeah.
I think that there was enough disdain for like investors' capital, right?
Yeah.
That it was surprising to me that he got another, shot at another startup, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, to your point, I'm like, people going really big,
Yep.
that to me, that had a chance to be the opportunity ruin, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing that I was thinking about when you were talking is there's this great Peter Thiel quote, which is, I think, the fundamental thing people misunderstand about risk. And he's always saying this. He's like, the greatest risk is to not take any risk at all. The people assume that staying the same actually doesn't have risk. And it's like, no, it actually does. And just to make it real in my job, right? If I'm like a decent investor in other sectors before AI stuff comes along, right? You could totally imagine like, oh my God, there's a new game on the field. Like, well, let me just like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Let me just like stick to my knitting.
Yeah.
I got this. Dude, that is ruin in my job. Ruin. But you could easily imagine being like, oh, no, like that's the safe play. It's like, no, that is the play that is for sure destined for failure. And if you think about it, like think about you. If you never learned to shoot threes, right? If you would have just been like, I mean, I don't know what your game was like when you were in high school. Okay. But
yeah. Back to the basket,
Yeah. But like back to the basket, 6'8" dude, play like that. Yeah. I remember being at Duke when you like started shooting threes, right? I remember, I think it was sophomore, maybe it was your junior year. I don't know.
Sophomore.
Okay. So I wasn't there. I was a senior in college, but like senior high school. But like that was like a big deal when you like brought that into your game. I mean, can you imagine if you had just tried to be like, no, like I'm gonna stay back to the basket. I mean, would you have played in the NBA for 3 years?
No, yeah. No, I wouldn't have made it.
Like, I don't know. That was probably a risk then to like go and try to start doing something differently.
So protecting your position actually can mean evolving.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
protecting your position actually means I have to get up off this my spot on the couch
I
and
think so.
and do something to protect what I've built to this point, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that to me is like, this is what's so interesting. Like, there's this super fascinating point of view that I forget. I read this. It was in the Elon Musk book. Walter Isaacson wrote a book on Elon Musk. And by the way, like, by the way, Shane, the other day my kids told me that they had like read that book on like their Kindles, and I was like, really? Like, and it was kind of cool for them to like have read a book that I've read that like they, like, anyway. And so the interesting thing on them, Walter Isaacson's point in this is like Elon Musk seems like he's just like seeking risk everywhere, right? His point is like he's actually incredible at like eliminating risk. Like, what he actually does when he starts one of these companies is he systematically goes through, okay, if we're going to achieve what we need to achieve, I got to like knock out each of the things that prevents it. I have to go and eliminate the risk. And so one of the points of view that's kind of counterintuitive is like sometimes the people that we think are the most risk seeking are actually just like the most aware of the baseline risk of staying stagnant.
Yep.
Right. And they're actually almost risk averse. Like, oh my God, I got to get rid of that. I got to solve that problem. But they just see risk everywhere, and they go and like eliminate it. So I've always thought that's kind of cool too.
That makes, I mean, that's what I try to do as a defender when I'm guarding the best guys in the world. I had the data, and for the basketball enthusiasts out there and in your pickup games, the worst thing that you can ever do to a player that you're guarding is allow him or her to get to the basket or foul them. All right. If you're shooting free throws, right? Why? Because the free throw and the dunk / layup shot by the rim is the easiest shot to hit, right? Universally. All right. Whether that's YMCA ball or that's the NBA, right? So like Elon, I had to eliminate that shot.
Yeah.
And any shot besides the free throw or the dunk / 2-foot, 3-foot shot, I can live with. I've already eliminated the two most dangerous shots for me as a defender. So I get that. And that, again, that's the safest thing for me to do, is to eliminate those two things.
Yeah.
Right? Except everything else that may or may not happen.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this actually in relation to, Alex. Do you remember when Alex was telling us the story of the play where he got hurt? And he was like, I kind of knew that the way we were blocking it wasn't right. You know what I'm saying? Like he like had it in the back of his mind.
Yep.
And he's like, but effectively, like I didn't want to like upset the apple cart and be like, we got to change, like, gosh darn it, we have to change this, whatever. You think about that, and it's like, oh my gosh, like what if so the risk there was actually staying the same. The risk was like run the play rather than being dynamic enough to use what he saw to like, do that. And it's like, well, that created a lot of risk for this man's health. And so I think that I don't know what it is in everyone's life, but I do think that people tend to overestimate the safety of being the same.
Yeah.
I think that because they assume the world stays the same. And it's like, no, dude, like I think the world changes a lot.
But, I always come back to this. In my life coach, shout out Jim Kachalka, he always says this. He goes, Shane, never forget, people are not inherently afraid of change. People are afraid of loss.
Oh, say that more. Give me some more details on that.
So, people talk about, okay, you got to change your ways, and in a vacuum, change is not inherently scary. Okay, the ramifications of what happens if I change from the status quo and I lose something, I lose status, I lose, earning power, I lose my job, I lose my social status. That is what freaks people out. And so it's a very human core instinct that change. People change. We've evolved for centuries, right? That's a part of our DNA. We're always changing. But when we start to think about the ramifications of losing whatever it is we think that change will bring, nope, I'm not changing. I'm staying the same. So think about Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Right. Blockbuster saw Netflix coming down the pipe, and they said, no one's gonna like get their DVDs by mail. They want to go to the store, and they want to search the aisles and get the movie they want. They could have changed. They could have bought Netflix. They could have nipped Netflix in the bud, but they were scared of losing who they were. right? They were
Okay.
scared of losing their culture, whatever, and they got disrupted. So, I think about that a lot when thinking about risk, thinking about change. You know, am I not changing because I'm more enthralled about the upside, or am I more worried
Yeah.
about what I might lose?
Okay, so question for you then. I in my like thinking about you particularly in basketball, but actually not just in basketball. I actually think you're pretty analytical about loss. Meaning like if you're doing the right stuff and something goes against you, you seem actually very sanguine about it. You know what I'm saying? Like um let's say we were playing blackjack and you like lost money, but you like played it the right way, you doubled on the right stuff. You see what I'm saying? You were playing in a shoe where like you thought there was going to be a lot of high cards, but they showed up for the other people at the table, not you, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I actually think you'd be like relatively sanguine about having lost like the money. I think about like the Kobe games where you're guarding him and he goes off, right? But you're like, look, like the Michael Lewis article talks about this, like
yeah,
where you're like, look, like one of the games he goes off. It's not like you like changed your strategy. You're like, look, like I'm doing the best. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
yep.
So do you think that you have to train yourself to be like more okay with loss, than we are naturally inclined to be, or are you naturally like that?
The great Sam Hinkie taught me a really important lesson about process, and this was in No Stat All Star, but we talked about this all the time. And he said, "I'm much more concerned about what should have happened than what actually happened."
Oh, I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
So I'm much more concerned. I'm much more concerned about what should have happened given the situation versus what actually happened. And in basketball, like you really can't control whether a guy makes or misses a shot, right? There's a randomness, a luck involved. Obviously, the better shooters like Steph Curry, they're going to make more than the non-shooters, right? And so the ability to affect that is not that great on any individual shot, but as a defender, I can influence where that shot
Yeah.
is taken.
Yeah.
And in the grand scheme of things, where that person takes that shot, all right, will determine over the long run how many times he makes that shot. And so it's really an amazing metaphor for life, and
Yes.
to be
Yes.
to be process focused, to be obsessed about what should have happened versus what actually happened. Now, like, look, you're saying, Shane, you don't care about what happens. No, of course I care, but I can detach myself from anything if I knew the process was fair, right? If I I'm writing a book now, and if I spent 3 hours writing and I'm putting thoughts on paper, and this is how I want to write the book, and it comes out and it's a terrible chapter, like that's okay. Like this is my process. Maybe I got to think about my process, but like it's a byproduct of process, and so it's really liberating to be able to buy into that and be like, look, we did the right things. We followed the recipe. All right, we just like we let the steak cook for 2 minutes longer than it should have, but we followed the recipe. That shit happens. And so that was one of the best lessons that Sam taught me, to think probabilistically and be okay, and be okay when things don't go your way if the process was the right one.
I think that I am like more okay with loss than I think some people are, right? And I think the reason for that is I try to establish like the baseline, like what really matters is pretty low. Like, does Avni still love me? Are the kids happy and healthy? You see what I'm saying? Like, kind of like I want to be able to say like no matter what happens, like hopefully it's not like that stuff. And so I actually am pretty honestly, I don't think I'm actually that great at dealing with like something if it's personally a problem. You know what I'm saying? Professionally, I think I'm pretty good because like I can compartmentalize the thing that is like, oh, that's the thing that actually counts. But I actually think I probably wear stress too much when it's personal rather than professional. But anyway, um, the thing, Shane, one of my most like contrarian things that I say is that I believe is a little bit of like focus on what matters, not just what you can control.
Hmm.
And so it's like the opposite, right? Because like a lot of times there's like focus on what you can control. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, no, like if something matters, like even if it's not obviously within your control, like go try to change it.
Hmm.
And I think that the underlying logic for that is sometimes we might have more ability to change things than we think.
Mhm.
We might underestimate what we can change.
Yep.
And so, like, I think that one of the things I take some pride in is someone's like, well, that's not going to happen. I'm like, well, have we tried? Like, did you even like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Give me an example. Give me an example of that at in Instacart.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So I think at Instacart, an example would be like from a long time ago. From a long time ago, this is very nerdy, but like the grocery market is such where Instacart, you are more likely to use it if we have the grocer that you want to shop from.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, Grocery is a more concentrated market than people realize, meaning that like the top 15 grocers in the country make up 80% or so of the volume of groceries. Okay.
And very brand loyal.
Very brand loyal. Exactly. Like in Florida, often it's Publix, in St. Louis, it's Schnucks, like whatever it might be. But anyway, so we actually like we don't control what those 15 companies do, especially 10 years ago, on like, are they going to get on Instacart or not? You
Yep.
know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so it's very easy to be like, look, like we just got to sign the partners we can sign.
Yep.
And so if there's 300 grocers in the country and 15 of them are the ones that are the most concentrated, make up 80, but the other 285 are kind of like ready to sign up with us, you could just imagine us spending a lot of time on like the 285,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's like, look, that's what we control. These other 15, like they got big things going on.
Yeah.
I think sometimes what I'd advocate for is like, no, we still have to spend time on the 15.
Oh,
What is the new creative thing that we're doing to get one of those 15? Any movement on one of those 15 is worth like 20 of those other ones. So even though it's low likelihood, even though it's like unclear, like what is the plan on one of those 15? Like, what about this? What about this? What about this crazy idea? What about this? And I think that that can be frustrating sometimes because people are like, well, people like progress. They want to move forward. And like, I think, I'm not even sure I'm right. I just think that my nature sometimes is like, well, if that's the thing that matters, are we sure we've done everything
yeah.
to bring it out? So maybe that's an example.
Well, you bring up a great point, and we haven't discussed this at all. Upside,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Good point.
like I will take a chance on anything. I will bet on anything if the payoff is worth the risk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
100%.
so like when you talk about taking risk, like that is always the metric in the back of all of our minds is like, yeah, but like if there's a percentage chance where this pays off and it 10x's or whatever, like it's worth it, right? And so maybe as important as assessing what you have to lose is obviously what you
Yeah.
have to gain.
Great point.
Like we're loss averse, as people, obviously. So it's much more enticing to thinking about what you stand to lose versus what you have to gain, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a, yeah, I mean, it's almost so obvious. I can't believe we haven't talked about it. But like, and I don't mean that against you. I just more mean like, of course. I mean, like, obviously,
No, it's part of it, right?
yeah, it's like to do what? Like, there's this great Bezos quote, which is he's like, people have like a baseball mentality. Even the big swing is like from baseball, right? He's like, the thing you have to remember. And he says it's about business, but it's also about your life, right? Like, he's like, in baseball, like if the best thing happens, you hit a grand slam, you score 4 runs.
Yep.
He's like, in business or like in life, the best thing happens, you can score 1,000 runs. Like, remember, like it's not capped. This is a crazy example, Shane, but like you scored like an infinite number of runs by like going and making sure Heidi wanted to be your wife.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing with me with Avni. Like, I don't know, like what level of risk was willing to be taken on to bring that on? Like,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
But I think that to your point, like a lot of times this is actually really interesting. I'm so happy you said it. Like, a lot of the art of like venture capital is thinking hard about what could go right. Like,
Which is different than private equity. Private
yeah,
equity and VC are complete opposites. In private equity, you're like, oh shit, competitor might disrupt us. The market, you're always looking at like roadblocks. But VC, just the opposite, right? What can
well,
go?
I think that, and I'm sure our private equity listeners would say like, no, we think I'm an upside too. And like, yes, they do for sure. But I think that mathematically, to make it real, like you said, in a big PE fund, I think you basically like, you really don't want to lose money on any of the investments. It just like mathematically makes it very difficult. And if you do, you want to lose like only a little bit. In venture, it is expected that you'll lose money on a lot of the investments. And so, but to your point on the what could go right, like it's hard. Like, there was this, like I think that people take Uber for a second. Like I think the first reaction to Uber is like, well, wait a second, they might get like crushed by the taxi market. It's hard to think about this now,
Yeah.
you know, but like, wait a second, there's like an enormous lobby. Like you can't even the taxi market lobby is going to prevent you from like being able to share someone's car. And it's like very easy to imagine, like, there's how is this going to work?
Yep.
And the people that really thought about Uber in terms of like the risk reward, they're like, yeah, true, that might happen. But you might have a world where nobody owns a car. The thing about true, like what could go right? Like we're not there, you know. But like if they're like, if ride sharing really works,
Yeah.
you know, like not nobody, but like way, way, way fewer people own cars, other than the people providing like the, you know what I'm saying? And then those people might have gotten even like, man, and actually, in fact, maybe nobody owns a car because it gets to autonomous because they're thinking about like Waymo even from 10 years ago.
Yep.
And like that's just like a different way of thinking about the world in terms of like, well, what's that company worth? If it's the company that provides rides to everyone and no one owns a car and all the cars are autonomous, you don't even have to pay the drivers.
Yep.
And that is like a real reframe of like, how
Yeah.
do you think about things? And I do think some level of that in your day-to-day life, especially as you evaluate potentially big risks, is really valuable of the think deeply about what could go right. So maybe one theme, like earn the right to take risk. Two, like keep your lifestyle low, you know?
Yep.
And three, like make sure you think deeply about what could go right. Those do feel like some lessons.
Well, how do you get there though? You live in Silicon Valley, so that is the pervasive thought,
Yeah.
right? What could go right?
Yeah.
What is the potential?
Yeah.
It's tantalizing to think of what,
Yeah.
I'm
I know.
I'm humble,
I know. I
Birmingham,
know.
Michigan, just a Midwesterner guy, just
Assembly line mentality.
assembly line mentality. I'm thinking, God, what could go wrong here? Let's just keep this line moving here. So how do you get there? How do you get there if you're not in that environment? And can we teach people to take risks, or how should people think about it? And I know, you had a great reframe there, for our listeners out there. So that's great for a VC, but
I know.
help me out, Ravi. Help me out.
You know, Shane, it's so funny you say it because I think, I just reread Sam Walton's book,
Yeah.
and by the way, if anybody hasn't read it, Made in America, read it. So good.
Yeah.
But he's like a product of the Depression. And you could easily imagine somebody like who like product of the Depression just being like, dude, I'm just trying to stay afloat here. Like
Yeah.
we went through something terrible.
Yep.
And he ended up being like very, very, very risk seeking and very willing to like try things and fail, like didn't worry about being wrong, whatever. So I think the first thing though, I guess I'd say for me, like it is way easier for me to have taken any risk because like my parents created a baseline of like, it was just going to be okay.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is just like a gift that was given that I had nothing to do with. I think the way to teach people, though, to take risk is to be more objective. You got to be more Shane Battier when it comes to evaluating the upside and downside. You have to see reality clearly. You can't let your loss aversion, or frankly, maybe on the other side, your like ego of wanting the thing to. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you have to be objective in the way that you evaluate it. And so I do think the discipline of like evaluating risks is probably something where like you need to have a framework for evaluating them that is
Consistent.
Yeah, consistent, auditable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I actually think everyone's going to call me like an AI maxi. I think that like if you don't have a friend to talk to about it, I think you putting it into Chat GPT of like, I'm dealing with this situation, right? Using GPT-5, I'm dealing with this situation right now. Here's how I see the upside and the downside. Can you help me think about whether I'm being objective about the upside and downside here?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder, if we're talking about looking at it objectively.
Feedback's a gift.
AI,
Feedback's a gift, right? Feedback is a gift. I just remembered, I think it was Tony Robbins who said this. I saw one of his specials somewhere, and it stuck with me. He said, when people change? When the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of what could happen with some change.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I also think this might be the first time we've quoted Tony Robbins on Glue Guys, which is pretty good.
That's the only Tony Robbins quote I know.
Shane, I got one more. I got one more to help people on this. Okay. And this is a big shout out to Mike Dunleavy, Mike D. Okay.
My boy.
Our boy. Okay. Which is this theme. Nobody cares. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why this matters. And a big shout out. I hope Mike D is listening right now. But I think there's this huge thing that people have when they think about taking risks. Like, what are people going to say?
Yeah.
Right? What are people going to say? And I think the real answer is nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about nobody's thinking about your life like that. They're thinking about their own life. Yeah. And so to the extent you have any unwillingness to do something because you're afraid of what someone's going to say, just Mike D. Nobody cares. Yep. Nobody cares. Right? Yep. I think that is such an important thing as we think about trying to teach people to take more risk, is at the very least, don't worry about what anybody's going to say because they don't care. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves.
Yep. There's a great political cartoon that I saw one time, and it's like what your brain thinks. And it's you in the middle of a crowd and everyone has, iPhones out, they record you. And the next one is the reality. And it's you in the middle, and everyone's looking at the skies, looking at their own phones, pointing over there, looking at everywhere but yourself. But so Blue Guy listeners, have faith. Ravi's right. No one probably cares. All right, listen, your family or your close friends.
I think that is probably the most liberating thing that you could have, is that just nobody is thinking about it. Just nobody cares. Yeah. I think that if I could give one lesson to somebody, it'd be that. Because then it's cool. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But don't have it be whatever. I truly, Shane, I've always thought about this for you, which is that I think that being embarrassed is a really hard emotion. You know what I'm saying? It's so we're all proud. We all want to puff our chests out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I always think about this as it relates to you when you were sitting in the finals, for the first time, getting the first DNP CDs. And we've talked about it all the time. But the biggest thing that I think about there is your ability in that moment to not let embarrassment bring you down. It sucks all of a sudden. It's on fucking TV. I don't know. I would imagine it's not just that you're not contributing. It's also that it's very public. If tomorrow I get the equivalent of benched at Sequoia, I don't know, does anybody really know? Yours is it's so public. And so I think that shows a lot of mental strength to have not been embarrassed in that moment, and I don't know, I'm curious, did you feel that at all? Was that an emotion that even ran through your head?
I was much more hurt because I felt that people who previously believed in me no longer believed in me.
Yeah.
I didn't care. When you're in professional sports, you get all the trolls on social media, and you're kind of used to the bad articles about you, and hey, we should trade this guy for this guy, and so you develop a thick armor. So when that happened, when I was told hey, we don't need you tonight, it was more man, I used to be the guy that you always counted on, and I'm not anymore. So it was much more that. But I think I thank my parents for this, and my parents were not, learned people. They didn't have, deep talks with me about life philosophy. But one of the things my mom was great at, she said, just be the best you can be, and never let basketball define who you are as a person. Right. And so I always had a great awareness of basketball is what I do. It's not who I am.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. That's really hard, especially for these young guys coming up now in professional sports and the social media, and their identity is, it is the sport.
Yeah.
And so being able to separate what you do from who you are allows you to just step back a little bit and say, okay, what's real, what's not, and what can I control, what can I not?
There's this great, when you said this, there's this amazing Paul Graham essay. It's called "Keep Your Identity Small," And it's not about basketball, but it's exactly the same point, which is effective. Like things that you have as like your identity, they actually prevent you from evolving and changing because you have to protect like this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so his point is like, look, like anything you have in your identity is effectively like as your stated identity or implied identity. You're basically not going to change that. You're going to defend that at all costs.
Yep.
He's like, this is why political arguments are actually tough. If you identify as like one political party, you kind of end up in like a weird contortion of stuff that you like,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, well, whatever the party says, and like the party has different goals than you might, And so I think again, like if you were like, I'm not going to shoot threes because I'm a back to the basket player, that'd have been a terrible identity to have, and it would have really prevented you. One of the guys I admire most, future Glue Guys guest, is Brett Taylor, who is the chairman of OpenAI and the co-founder of this company, Sierra. And it's actually quite amazing because he's this incredible like leader, but he started out as like a engineer, and he's an amazing engineer. But I think over time, he sort of, I think, has lived this like Paul Graham idea of keep your identity small, like because he at some point thought like the only way to solve problems was through like being a great engineer. And then he learned over time, like he went from that and at some point became a CTO as like, well, actually my job now is not to like be a great engineer. It's to like empower the people around me to solve the problems and to make sure that I have people that can do it. Then he became the co-CEO of Salesforce, which is like a sales job, right? But again, he was sort of like, I'm not a tech person, I am just like a business person. Yeah. And why can't I learn how to do sales? And now he's a tech founder and it uses all of his different things, but he's sort of, and it's not, and by the way, being even an exec versus a founder has identity, and I think he is somebody who he's like, don't let an ossified version of yourself prevent you from becoming the next version of yourself. Yep. And I think that is like so good on your point on identity. And it reminds me of these players and, all this stuff, because the more that you identify with something, like I try to keep the identity of like something beyond like, I hope to be a good dad, a good husband, and a good friend. Other than that, like, what do I really need in my identity? Because even if I put in my identity that I'm supposedly smart, well, all of a sudden then I'm like too proud to ask a question. Like, right? Because it's like, well, shit, what if they don't think I'm smart anymore? So you actually really have to be careful.
My identity is, again, always be the dumbest person in the room. All right. And I'm definitely the dumbest guy on this podcast.
that is definitely not true.
That is an identity I'm proud of,
Did you hear Cooper Flagg's mom's quote about this?
No.
It was great. She was like, we always told Cooper that if you find that you're the best guy in the gym, it's time to find a new gym.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like really cool. It explains, why he, kind of entered college early. It explains why he left college pretty quickly, but I was like, that's a cool attitude, for that person. And it's something I think that's good for all of us to keep in mind.
Again, it's safety versus spreading your wings, and nothing great. My other favorite quote is, there's never been a great story that says, so I went home after dinner, went to bed. Right?
Yeah, totally. So I had dinner and then I went home.
Yeah, no great story said never.
I think, Shane, on that's so funny. Like my version of that is not nearly as good as yours, but it's always like, the only thing that makes a story interesting is like the ups and downs and the like mistakes, right? Always no fun if you're not like, well, what happens then? But I really like your, no great story. It begins with, so I had dinner and then I went home. Like, speaks to your everything in moderation, including moderation.
Remember, kids, nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Okay.
One of my theories on this, Shane, is that two things. One, I think that at the ATM after 2 a.m., they should make you do a math problem. Like, kind of like two parts. Like one, like, are you sure you need to take this? Just go home. Yeah. And then I think you should have to do like a somewhat complicated math problem to get the money out at that point.
That's good. That's a good business idea, actually.
The other thing, I think that same thing should be on your phone. Like when you're calling somebody after 12 a.m., there should be some mechanism like, are you sure? You sure you want to do this? Like, do this Wordle real quick before you do this Sudoku puzzle before you make this call.
Yep. So I know we're hypocrites here. So, no great story started with, so I went home after dinner. But also, nothing good happens after 2 a.m. Okay.
There's a lot of time between dinner and 2 a.m., Shane.
Exactly. Just be efficient. Just be efficient with your time.